Hey everyone, and welcome to the first episode of AFLW Inside Out. We are so excited to be here. I'm Laura Spurway, 3AW's AFLW broadcaster, and with me is Meg McDonald, former Geelong skipper and colleague of mine.
Hey Laura, we've gone with Meg Mac straight off the top, don't mind it, but it's an awesome thing to be part of. Really excited to be here with you, but particularly excited to be here in August, this time of the year. Sun shining on the weekend and it feels like W's on the horizon, and we're here to talk about it.
Just context for all of you out there who may be interested in joining this conversation. Meg and I are colleagues at 3AW, worked on the AFLW coverage together last year. Meg's jumped ship into the media after retiring as Geelong captain. And this is something we've been talking about for a while. We've been talking about trying to get a podcast that digs a little bit deeper into some of the issues and conversations that we hear and that we want to have around AFLW. And I, as a broadcaster, have been trying to have that I don't think we're seeing at the moment.
Yeah, that's really well said. I think that's been one of the joys of my career, was being able to have access to rooms and conversations that were interested in the growth of the game, and I remain interested in that. It's going to be hard for me to take my player's hat off at certain times in this, and it's been a challenge to put the media lens on it at times, but I think we need to step into this space and really contribute in our own way to the growth of the game. And part of the growth of the game is having people speak about it. So I'm really excited to stay connected to the competition and to try to continue to advocate for it. And another joy from this part of my transitional career has been the fact that I've gotten to know you a little bit better, and I've enjoyed how we've worked on AFLW together. But it was really of interest to me recently when I spoke to you about your career in broadcasting and the fact that it's not one, you haven't sort of settled in sports. Sports been the goal the whole time.
Yeah, it took me a while to get here. It's not easy to get into sports broadcasting. I mean, it's better now than it used to be in terms of being a woman in sports broadcasting, but I am not a professional athlete. I do not know how to do anything to a standard that I would brag about, unlike you, Meg.
No bragging anymore, mate. Don't you worry.
No, you're still ex-professional athlete to me. I just think, I've really wanted to work in sports broadcasting, but I couldn't hang my hat on being someone who'd been an elite athlete. And there's more and more women in that space, retired or current professional athletes, who are doing that. And all power to them. There's a place for that.
To us.
All power to you.
Yes.
But for someone like me, it made it that little bit harder to see if I could do it. And I finally managed to get my shot after years and years of segueing into other jobs and trying to see if I could get into sport, and I did that at Channel 7 and now here at 3AW and through this podcast, so I'm stoked.
Well, the point is, as it expands, there's room for us both. I'm interested with that. Do you feel like there are parallels between what you observe from my experience as a player in women's sport and your experience in broadcasting as a woman?
Yep, I think there are parallels for sure. I think there's a place for both. I definitely think there's a place for both. It's not easy trying to enter a profession where you feel a bit of imposter syndrome at times, because I'm
unfamiliar with that. What's that like?
I haven't played the game to a level that, a lot of people around me have, people I have conversations with and offer opinions with. Yeah. And, I actually grew up in Sydney. So I grew up with rugby league. And so for me to be working in...
I wasn't sure if we were going to disclose that off the top.
Well, I've done it because I want to be upfront.
You've taken it up like no one I've seen before. I'd honestly, your passion for this sport and for your, let's also declare it, Western Bulldogs.
Yep, Llama Doggies.
Is strong and deep and now a part of who you are.
Yeah, it's my mates in Sydney don't know me anymore. They're like, who have you become? Who have you become working in AFL and AFLW media? But this is actually a really good day for us to be launching this because this article in the Herald Sun, and I'll hold it up for people who might be watching this on YouTube, this is a massive, massive, massive deal. Basically, they've come out today, the AFL, and said, we want to be bold. We want AFLW to be in the top 5 sports in Australia, played by men or women, as part of a nationwide expansion. And the metrics for being a top 5 sport in Australia, attendership. That's a new word.
No, that's what we're going for.
Attendance, viewership, participation, our digital footprint, and following commercial revenue. And then, of course, the football itself, so match quality and competitiveness. Now, that's a big call to say that AFLW, and they're hoping maybe in the next decade, will be in the top 5 sports in Australia.
Well, it's not an ambition that we disagree with. I think we love shooting for the stars in that respect, and I think Laura Kane's made a point of the fact that on a lot of those metrics, AFLW is within the women's space, hitting those markers. So I think if we aim to be the number 1 sport for women, then it should follow that the number one sport for women is in the top 5 for those things nationally and regardless of gender. So I like the ambition. I think we've spent an awful lot of time, a decade for me, and even our time today, speaking about all the ways that we can get there, all the hurdles that we need to overcome to get there.
So this is Laura Kane speaking about this morning on 3AW. Let's have a listen.
We're already at the top in a number of the metrics from a women's sport perspective. No reason not to be aspirational, to be up there with our fellow men's competitors. The numbers from the weekend just gone with our representative game were incredibly encouraging in that regard.
So that was Laura Kane there speaking on 3AW. I mean, I think they've got a strategy, they've got a plan to do this. The nuts and bolts of it aren't quite out there. They're sort of keeping that within the 4 walls. But if we could get it if we could get there in under 10 years, I mean, that's a pretty lofty time frame, I would have thought. But this is sort of what we need to hear, I suppose. Like the AFLW, I think, needs to dream big, go big. And if you're someone that's invested in this game, that is what you want to hear.
Yeah, I agree. And I think throughout the course of the history of the competition, we've oscillated between feeling like those goals are too far away and they're too malleable and changeable and asked for us to plot the path from where we are to where we're going. And that's what's next. It's how do we fill out that part of the plan? What are the key things within the game that are going to help us get there? So it's a matter, I think, of setting those goals, which are lofty and a decade's a long time to achieve them. And then when the time is right, drilling into, and hopefully that's what we can do on this podcast, what is going to help us take steps towards that, because we can put them out there and it's important. It's almost like saying we want to win a premiership.
Yep.
Yeah, we all want to win a premiership. It's easy to say, but when you go into work day in, day out, and you try and work towards that goal, you become process driven, and that's where the emphasis has to be on all the little things that are going to impact getting there. And hopefully, as they say, the result will take care of itself. But we've got a long way to go, and I think there are things to address at the highest level. We're here to talk about AFLW, and that's a top down and trickle down approach. But there's also the participation at grassroots. Get my words out. There's a participation at grassroots level that was equally exponential in its growth early days, early doors, as Laura said a few times. So we had outstanding viewership, outstanding attendance, outstanding participation growth in that first season. While it's new and fresh, how do we maintain that? And I think it's multifaceted, of course. There's things to be addressed in the elite competition, and then there's lots to be addressed in between the pathway and that elite, and keeping women and girls in the sport beyond just to play at the highest level.
Yep.
I think that's creating that depth and groundswell will only help the more elite pathways.
So we speak about marquee events and some of the suggestions in this article: dedicated women's gather round, more double headers, new revenue streams. And obviously we had one of those marquee events on the weekend. So we're going to go into that now. We're going to go inside the international. And I think from all reports, Australia defeating Ireland 91-41, sellout crowd of just over 9,000, almost 600,000 viewers on Foxtel. That's more than the AFLW grand final last year. Yep. So from those metrics, you're going tick, tick. It's a unique start to the AFLW season to do that. How do you think it was as a scene setter or opener to the season?
I loved it. You and I were a part of broadcasting the game, and 15 minutes into the first quarter, I was just overjoyed with the standard that we were seeing on the ground, the type of footy and the joy. But that joy began before we start talking about standards and the worth of watching it. Does it or doesn't it hit some sort of metric around something that's worthy of our attention? I think that was hit for 6 in the lead up. We had that, it was a sellout crowd, and we can talk about all the commentary around that. But when I saw those two teams running out, the pride and their expressions around the fact that they were out there, I think that was absolutely crucial to the experience of it. And if we listen to the players in the aftermath, and both immediate and the ones that we spoke to, that we've spoken to today, it was all about the opportunity to connect and to play with each other. I think that stood out. How did you see it?
Yeah, look, I really enjoyed it just purely from the emotion of the players. And you could see that when the Irish were standing there and their national anthem was playing, like they're thinking, in what world am I in Australia playing a professional sport, getting paid with my fellow countrywomen in front of a sold-out crowd. Because when you think about where they come from, and this is interesting for me in terms of the conversation around, are we doing enough? Have we done enough for the women's game? If you speak to the Irish players, this is beyond their wildest dreams because they've grown up playing Gaelic football, which is not considered a professional sport. It's an amateur sport. They don't get paid. I think they get a government subsidy for gear and for travel. They do it out of pride and they do it out of the love of the sport itself. So if you are saying to them, you can come to the other side of the world, play professional sport in proper venues, and there's a whole different conversation to be had around venues, which we will have on this podcast. But I remember coming across with a couple of Carlton draftees last year, and the first time they toured, Princes Park, Icon Park, they could not believe it. They could not believe what they were being exposed to. And I'm not saying that we can't do better in that space, and that's a conversation probably for a different episode, but it's just interesting seeing it through their eyes. It's interesting seeing how grateful they are for what they're being exposed to and the tussle that we have to want to do better and better.
Absolutely. And that's not to say we do it in every way better than the Irish do it back home with their own game. They have an immense amount of pride, and there's a lot that we can take from there and continue to bring over to help influence our game. Particularly, I think about pathways and the way that all children there, regardless of gender, participate in sport, and it's the norm that women and girls, gender diverse people play Gaelic, and that's where the depth of their competition and the passion I feel lies. I had a wonderful opportunity a couple of years ago at the Cats. We were trying to recruit Aisling Maloney and went over there and visited Rachel Kearns, my housemate at the time, and her family in Mayo. Mayo have had a huge week.
How good.
And it's exactly the same thing. It's trying to convey to them the sheer opportunity that exists once you come to Australia, and we then went straight to GMHBA, and to see Aisling's reaction to that was similar to the one that you're describing. But I don't think that's exclusive to the Irish. I watched the game on the weekend, and in so many ways I was reminded of where the women's games come from in this country. It comes from community, and the game did a fantastic job at recognising the women and girls that have contributed to getting the game to where it is now, and the relationships between the players themselves. When we first started this sport, you go there much like the Irish. It was amateur. It was paying to play a lot of the time, purely out of the joy that it gave you and the want and endeavour to get better as an athlete. I think we saw that out there, and they had the opportunity to connect across club lines. As it's become more professional, that question of, why the motivating factor, yes, we want to advance professionalism, we want to have an income that's sustainable, has at times, I feel like, muddied the waters around the sheer want and love to play the game and to go over and above to be the best player that you can be. Every player out there goes above and beyond what is in the terms of their contract to be the best that they can be, and they were relishing the opportunity to have that. As I said, as we sort of you go into your clubs, the professionalism increases. It becomes a matter of how we're going to make sure that we don't share secrets and that Geelong finally beats North Melbourne. Something still close to my heart. But when you connect across that, you get to share in the joy of the sport and being able to play it at its highest level to showcase how fantastic it was. And I think that rung true in watching it and listening to the game. And that, I think, is like the beating heart and the gravity that will draw more people to it, is how do we promote the look and feel and joy and exceptional talent of a game like that and have it emanate out and influence the competition this year and in the years to come to reach those metrics that put us at number one.
So it was also AFLW Captain's Day, and we managed to have a chat to Jazzy Garner. Casually picks up best on ground medal again in
what
Australia.
Hasn't she done? Well, we all know what she hasn't done, but also, Australian skipper, so what an honour. And this is what she said about the experience.
Just sharing the field alongside so many superstars. Like, you never thought you'd get the opportunity to play alongside, Kate Hoare, Tyler Hanks, Georgia Prasparkas, like just so many great players. I think that's what I enjoyed most about it. And also, I think just showcasing women's footy and how far it's come. Obviously, I've been in the competition since the start, first game. I've played since a 7-year-old, and just to see, like, after the game, there was young boys and girls on the sideline wanting photos, autographs, and to think back when I was a kid, like, my role models were men's players, and I think now, young boys and girls can look up to W players. And
The other takeaway from this game, Meg, which of course is a little bit more humorous, is that there was a pub lockout.
Yes, indeed. We tried to get the lowdown on that, but it went straight to social media. I think win, lose or draw, the Irish are still proud that I think they know how to celebrate a little bit better than the Aussies. And from all reports, I think there was a combined club function. I'm still in clubland. There was a combined Australia-Ireland function.
Yep.
And the Irish stayed, I've heard different reports, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes before they went and joined their country people.
Off to the pub.
Off to the pub. And then, look, I heard lockout laws blamed in Sydney, but the Aussies tried to follow suit, as we often do. We just try to get in line and try to be as passionate and as entertaining as the Irish. They didn't make it in. They got locked out.
Tried to get into the pub. There is vision of Ash Riddell and Darren Crocker peering through the pub windows.
I think it's Vicky Wall that you can see just in front of the window.
You're not coming in.
I know.
It was amazing scenes. Now, we want to go nitty-gritty inside the game because it is a good look at some of the competition's best players ahead of the season starting. So who caught your eye? Whose form stood out to you? A potential weapon for the season ahead.
Well, there are all the obvious ones, aren't there? There's the Jazzy Garner winning the medal. And what I meant to say was that we know what she hasn't won. She hasn't won an AFLW League Best and Fairest. Yep. But there's everything. She's won everything, every other award under the sun. And tracking her career from that first ever goal to now is really, really something. But I thought it was such a beautiful mix of the players that are 10 years in. They've been part of the 10 years and the up-and-coming talent. I think the one for me was probably Mimstrom. I thought she was a bit stiff not to get best on ground. 19 disposals, 26 hit-outs, 6 clearances, 233 metres gained. She was unbelievable, and Schultz was there as well. So I think the rucks and that sort of sheer athleticism of them that was so dominant, even amongst the best athletes, was something that really stood out. And then the second one, and for the Irish, is Blaheen Boak. I mean, she kicked 3 goals, kept them in it for a time being, and it's easy to forget that she was an All-Australian in her semi-debut season, the season where she played her first game just last year. So North are going to be a threat.
I think it was 8 goals between North players that were playing in that match. Talia Randall had 4, Jazzy kicked 1, Blaheen kicked 3. It's a bit unfair, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. And they had their coach leading the way as well. So they're an exceptional team. Throughout the course of my career, we felt like we had this sort of one-sided rivalry against them, came into the competition at the same time, and it was always the team that Geelong hadn't beaten, has still yet to beat them. But what was interesting with it was you sort of progress through stages of resentment, motivation, envy, and then just respect. I feel like the last couple of years just landed at a place of going, gosh, they're just the best at it. And they're best at it on field and off, it would seem. I think there's really something in the fact that North, they have a club, their club has, to a degree, depended on the success of its women's program. That's what's bringing the wins into their footy club. And I think that really has an impact, as well, I'm sure, as having a woman CEO and president on their on-field success. So I think plenty of clubs will be looking to how they did it, how they do it continually, and I'm sure there were players who tried to pick Darren Crocker's brain along the way.
So if we look at the external, the outside of the game itself in terms of a success, I think it's definitely a success. I think you can't argue with the crowd that went. It did look good. That's part of, we know that's a big part of AFLW games. It's how it looks on the broadcast, the vibe in the stadium. And, I can see that this is going to be a staple going forward. It's just, what do they do next? Do they go to Ireland? Do they do a men's international game and take the W over at the same time?
I mean, I love the idea of that. I think there's, whether we do it in conjunction with the timing of huge matches in the Gaelic game, and there's bringing both men's and women's teams going over and playing at a time that aligns with the All-Ireland final. But just back to your point on how it looks, and you're a broadcaster, you have that broadcast experience. I think it's a huge part of the women's game, but it is a huge part of the business of sport, right?
Is.
It's not just to have it
whether
look
we like
good.
it or not.
Well, it's the the scarcity thing. It's looking at something and saying, I want to be a part of that. I will be a part of it next time.
Or there's empty seats. Look at all the empty seats.
Yes, that's the other side of it. But there's no doubt that those event matches and what AFLW has done so well, and there is some of the mythology around that first ever game, around that Adelaide Grand Final in 2019. is the lockout, is the 53,000. So I think they'd be looking for it to contribute to that. I would have liked to see maybe an in-between venue, and hopefully we can aspire to it in the future. Anyway, back to your question. I think it's hard to look past Sydney because Sydney are so good at turning up for women's sport. We know Adelaide is as well. I think it should possibly move around and possibly go overseas.
I'll put my hand up and say I was one of the people who wanted them to be risky with it in the sense of maybe looking at a bigger venue, and then, the conversations that we had after that in terms of what's feasible with who's funding it. The reality is this is funded by the AFL, and NAB, I think, chipped in too. So you don't have the New South Wales government saying we'll support you to put this on like you did with Men's Origin in Western Australia. That makes a difference in terms of what you can do. So I think, surface level we want more, or, we look at how could we have done this better and to a larger scale.
But the overriding message afterwards is it was a success.
Yes.
And would that have been the same I hope it would have, hey, I'm its biggest fan. A lot of it would have been similar had it been at the SCG, etc. Perhaps not to the same tune as we're able to sit here today and say that was just unbelievable. What do you think about it? We had a little conversation around the timing of it. Do you think it works in the promotion of the season itself? Because that's going to be what's important. This is a huge success by the attendance and the viewership, or the attendance-ship. Is that what you said earlier? Yeah, whatever we're going with. If that was an average for the season, the players would be playing more games. That's part of the CBA. And the view needs to be, we can't get to finals and be having the same conversation around venues. We need to earn bigger venues. And I'm preaching to the choir here. People that listen to this podcast, people that turn up, bring your mates. Because I don't know that people have ever gone to a game and not wanted to go again.
Okay, we're going to go inside the preseason now. There's a couple of issues that we want to hit. So obviously a difference this year was the number of practice games.
Yes.
So obviously there's the rep football side of it and there's the practice games side of it. How do you think they'll impact form in round one?
I think it can only be positive. I feel like we spoke to a captain earlier today that sort of said, how do you get better at something? You do more of it. And of course, all players are going to want that to be in season. But I think the starting point is playing more games together. It's been increasingly hard to get games into up and coming players because of the alignment with VFLW, et cetera, et cetera. So playing more football as a team that's more uniform across the competition, I think is only going to enhance the football when we arrive at round one. I mean, sound like a broken record, but how often do we say in the men's comp, they're hitting their stride at round 10 form-wise? Well, that would be almost at finals time for AFLW. So I think it's fantastic. It's led to, I think there have been a couple of top-up players required, but I think it's overwhelmingly positive. I think they were offered 6 and landed on 4 games. And each club will have treated it differently, but by all reports, it's been embraced.
Okay, so the one thing that I wasn't particularly a fan of was when the round 23-24 men's fixture dropped, that led to 9 changes for round 1 and 2 of the women's. And I had an opportunity to ask Greg Swan about it, the executive GM of football at the AFL, because I wanted to see what his response was, and this is what he said.
You're right, everybody has a view. There's a lot of criticism of it. But, from a viewership point of view, we're way ahead of where we've ever been. Attendances are the same. So you'll never get a perfect draw and you'll never get everybody happy. But in the main, I think, we don't, from the club's perspective, we don't hear too many complaints about the draw.
I do know there were some concerns from clubs about clashes between the men's and the women's games and wanting to be able to attend both games. Now, I'm not advocating that there should be a floating fixture for round 1 and 2 of the women's. I actually think that's a bad idea because the competition deserves some certainty for rounds 1 and 2 for the first few rounds. But I just think there needs to be a way around that much change for the start of the women's season.
Yeah, fixture uncertainty's been part of AFLW since it began. So I think I'm inclined to accept it if it means more doubleheaders, more viewership, as long as it doesn't preclude supporters from one club not being able to watch and support either in attendance or on KO or on radio, their two respective teams at once. I'm interested in what your response was to his response. Did you think, I asked about AFLW, there wasn't
And he went to, the men's metrics. Look, in fairness, he's not the fixture boss.
Yes.
But it is one of those things that I think if you're in a senior position at the AFL, you need to have a lens on both competitions.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm not saying that they don't, but in that case, what I would have liked was a little bit more on, we are aware that viewership and attendances are good with AFL. We're aware. So yes, you want to work on that, but that's not really where the focus needs to be. Like, there's a lot more metrics in place that you want to hit, triggers that haven't been hit with the AFLW. So I think, we could have found a way for that to be a little bit more organised at the start of the season. Anyway, that's just my little beef to start off our podcast. All right, so we mentioned it was AFLW Captain's Day. So we're going to take you inside Captain's Day. We asked the captains that we spoke to a question. If there's one thing that could be spoken a little bit more about with AFLW, what would you like that to be? And here are some of the responses.
I feel like I would love just to see people's skills spoken about a little bit more.
The level of professionalism and the I guess, skill of the game that we're getting to now, I think.
Highlighting our players as athletes a little bit more.
We see this with the W, and you mentioned, Meg, when we were talking in the lead up to this episode in world sport more generally, focus on the characters in the game, people who follow a particular player that they like rather than a team themselves. And this is an interesting conversation as well that came up in those answers, is we want more to be spoken about in terms of the skill level rather than those personalities or, what's going on social media, how a player, advocates for themselves in a social media space. And again, I think promotion's good, so you do you.
Sure.
But just that shift between looking at characters in the game, are they big on TikTok versus how do they play?
I tell you what, there was almost a little bit of, not tension, but there was a bit of difference in the answers of each of the captains, because we did have a couple that said, tell the stories of the players. I think it's so awesome that so-and-so does this outside. But overwhelmingly, it's, we are athletes. We want to be spoken about as such, and the different strengths and strategies that each player and each team bring to the field itself. You've got kids. How do you feel like how do you perceive them responding to the world at large? Is it characters and personalities?
I think at the moment they're a little bit young. So kids are 7 and 4. All I know with my daughter, and I've taken her to some W games, is she just looks at what they're doing.
Yeah.
And the fact that they come off and give her a high five, which is another reason why I just love the accessibility of W players. And that for her was just the bee's knees. Like she could not stop talking about the fact that she got to get up close with these players who gave her the time of day.
Yeah.
So I think in her age bracket, it's probably just looking at the phenomenon itself.
The interface between,
and just saying, I'm seeing.
Yeah.
You can't be what you can't see, that whole thing. Look at what I'm seeing. Look at what I could do.
Yeah.
If I want to go down that path. And that's what's so important for me. It's you make your own choices. You don't want to be that parent that says you have to play this sport, that sport or the other, but just have the opportunity to do it and have the opportunity to be good at it. Yeah. And you need so many things to make that happen. Again, probably for a different episode. Yeah. We want to talk about pathways and all of that. But I think her early exposure to it has just been fun. Yeah. And it's just been, and they're prepared to talk to me.
Yeah, completely. And it's got to be both, doesn't it? It has to be growing the game with social media, et cetera, and that accessibility for kids and people coming up through the sport. But it's also, as we said earlier, it's displaying the athleticism of these players like you do in so many other sports where women's participation is really well established. And obviously that happens in the men's side of our game. So much of the critique is, we sort of look at the men's and think we want the personalities of the women's, and the women's look at the men's and say we would love the analysis and the commentary of the and I think there's got to be middle ground from both. Yeah.
Now, we will bring you more of the responses from the captains next week because we've got so much that we want to talk about. 2 eps a week we're doing.
Yes, we are.
And we've got a big one for you on Friday. We have a special guest who's joining us. Many say the brainchild. Would you say that, Meg, of the AFLW? The former CEO.
The AFLW is his brainchild?
Yep.
I think that's excessive.
The former CEO, you can ask him yourself. The former CEO of the AFL, Gil McLachlan, is going to join us on Friday. And we thought, 10 seasons down, 11th season starting. Yeah. We want to hear from him on how he thinks it's going. He's outside of the AFL now.
So he's going to speak plainly, do we think?
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, that's the plan. No, I'm excited to speak with him. I have as I said, have had times during the competition where we've shared rooms where you're talking about the growth and development of the game. And a lot of his legacy as a CEO, I think, will be, he was there when the AFLW competition started. I'm really interested to hear from him as to how much credit he takes and how that is positioned for him in his legacy.
So this is AFLW Inside Out. Thank you so much for joining us for our first episode. We'll be back on Friday with Gil McLaughlin.